Good evening, everyone. Yes, I am deciding to walk home because there was some pleb, and I guess it's my fault as well for not sticking my hand out for the bus. But of course you didn't come here to find out about the schedule of the bus, or whether I fucked up or not. Well, I suppose some might, but not at the moment. I digress. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was this current situation regarding Poison XIX and the now national emergency that Boris the Cuck Johnson decided to put out. Because I want to remind Boris Johnson that this Omicron variant, yes, I'm not going to call it the Greek variant anymore, I'm just going to cut the crap, considering a lot of people have also mentioned it without trouble. But this Omicron variant, which I've already mentioned before, has a very high infection rate. Nobody here is denying that. I'm not denying that. However, the people in Africa themselves, the doctors themselves, have said that the symptoms are mild. And as such, I have this to say. Surely, if anything, rather than trying to lock us down, Boris Johnson, perhaps now would be the best time, more than any other opportunity we've ever had. Now would be the best time to meet friends, to gather in large groups, just like the protest is going to happen on the 18th. But I'll speak about that later. But now would be the best time for us to gather about. Since then, if we catch Omicron, and we catch it quickly and in large numbers, we will end up getting more natural immunity to it, which I'll just point out, there's a science mag that's even said that the human antibodies are 6 to 12 times better than the ones that they put in the vaccine. So how does the media, how do the pharmaceuticals, and how does the government explain that one? I'm sure they'll send a response sooner or later, maybe in the year 2060, but I digress. Even a magazine has said categorically that human antibodies are 6 to 12 times more effective, or 6 to 12 I should say, than actually having a vaccine. You know, the same ones that our government has been pushing. They haven't told us what's in it. There's the potential for Hydra vulgaris to be in it. There's the potential for something dangerous to be in it. Because some people have already had blood clots and have had heart problems, and some athletes have even had fucking heart attacks as a result of the vaccine. So, I'd like to ask the government and the fake stream media, when are they going to report the truth on this? The Omicron variant is mild, nothing more. And Poison XIX, yeah, it may be more severe, but Omicron can help us against it. So I say we should get out there, gather in groups, get the natural immunity and the herd immunity, and then we won't have as much of a problem with the real thing. For us to lock down and to basically restrict people from going to pubs, nightclubs and what have you, that's like sticking a £50,000 stack of cash in front of somebody and saying, do not take it. It makes no sense. It's basically saying to the people, the cure for this scamdemic, the cure for Poison XIX is right in front of you. Oh, and I'm going to be swallowing bronzers in a moment. Anyway, the cure for Poison XX is in front of you, but take our advice. Don't grab it. Don't take the cure. Get the shit that we want to inject in you instead. God, my tongue's really going to be screwed with that branch taste. Anyway, that is what I think of all this in perspective. They are trying to push for this. He's made a push to try and get 1 million people to have the booster jab every single day. Now, there is something called human rights, and we have the right to decide. whether or not we have a shot of the antidote, whether we want to wear a face nappy in stores. We have that right. The government cannot do this. The government cannot take away our rights. It would be unlawful, and they could be taken to court over it. Which is why the passports, the Poison XIX passports, I've already mentioned in the past. These things discriminate against people based on their socio-ethnological class, their sex, and their race. And that was, yes, that woman who was on Good Morning Britain. I don't know why I keep calling it Great Morning Britain. Anyway, that was from the woman who was on Good Morning Britain with that idiot-looking... Well, no, he's not an idiot-looking. He's just an absolute dickhead, bluntly speaking. You know, Benjamin Buttersworth, the boy who has a face that even I would like to smack, quite frankly. But out of respect for myself, I shall not lower myself to that level. But I digress. That was the same programme where this man said that anybody who doesn't get a shot of the antidote is selfish, stupid, and dangerous. Dangerous, even. Words are hard when you're trying to walk out here in the late night. Anyway. Oh, and another thing. I should have mentioned this. No, I have mentioned this. Medical exemption. You can actually use medical exemption to not wear a face nappy in shops and buses and shit. Just tell them you're exempt. And if they try to challenge it, like I said before, they will be in breach of the Equality Act 2010 under the grounds of medical discrimination. So as such, they're screwing themselves here. They are literally screwing themselves on their own restrictions. Kind of reminds me of the term falling on your own sword. This government has no legitimacy or no credibility. Well, and no credibility, I should say. So we don't have to comply with what they've done, especially considering that Christmas video got leaked, where basically Boris Johnson and his aides had a party and they were laughing at us because we couldn't back in 2020. So in other words, they have no right whatsoever to tell us that we can't celebrate Christmas. They have no fucking right whatsoever to say to us that you can't go and meet with friends, that you can't meet with family, and that you can't have a party when they can't even follow their own laws. So, no, Boris Johnson, I will be celebrating my Christmas. I actually had a Christmas meal today with my co-workers. There was about a dozen of us, all unmasked. We enjoyed our time there. What can you do about it? Jack shit, Boris Johnson. Anyway, they have no legal or credible right to tell us that we can't go and celebrate Christmas with our families. And only the sheeple will believe that he is correct. Only the sheeple will actually wear face nappies in shops and shit because they don't know any better. Once we tell these people you can use medical exemption to not wear a face nappy in shops, buses, cinemas, nightclubs, etc., etc., I think a lot of them will very quickly take heed of that. As for requiring us to give a negative test, or proof of negative test, or proof that we've been double jabbed with these Poison XIX passports, do you have any idea how easy it is to actually show them a negative test? I could do it right now. Oh, it's upside down. Anyway, you can easily show them a negative test. And they don't know when you fucking took it. Turns out mine's today. Because I have to test twice per week. And to be honest, frankly, I don't have to if I don't want to. I could literally just go into my workplace and give them the exact same fucking stick and tell them I test negative. for Poison XIX. They are relying on people in good faith to say that they are negative. And that can only end one way. Fucking horribly. Now, of course, I'm not encouraging anybody. This is not me saying, oh, well, if you've got Poison XIX, you should go up into work and have a negative test ready. No. What I'm saying is, people can fake it. People can go into wherever they want and categorically show them one of these negative tests to prove that you've tested negative for Poison XIX. And how can they tell whether or not it's an old one? They can't. Unless it's like really fucking obvious. But that's about it. The bottom line is, you could just go to the cinema, show them a negative. Don't know why I keep this, to be honest. Anyway, you could show them that negative, and that's proof of the negative Poison XIX. And then there's nothing they can do. But the bottom line is, these passports discriminate against us, and they encourage this discriminatory two-tier system where it's basically the jabbed and the unjabbed. How does the government explain that one? They say they're all about equality and fairness and don't tolerate discrimination or intolerance, and yet here they are, the government and the fake news media pushing for a fucking system that will make it so that those who haven't had the jabs are basically locked down and those that have can do whatever they want. Is that fair? I don't think so, personally. Like I said, it should be our medical right whether or not we choose to have this vaccine, this shot of the antidote. And anybody who tries to proselytize should be given a quick reprimanding and told to basically shut the fuck up and let us get on with our lives. Because I wouldn't go out of my way to harass people in the street or waiting at bus stops or what have you, or in the shops and say, get that face nappy off. Because you know what would happen? I would expect them to kick the living shit out of me. Or at the very least reprimand me, as I've said. Trying to make sure I don't turn into roadkill now. Anyway, I would expect them to do to me, as I said, I would do to anybody who tries to proselytize to me. It is our legal right to choose whether or not we have this, whether it's because we don't feel safe about it, whether it's because we don't want to conform with the government, I'm both, whether it's because you just don't like the unknown. You have every right to choose. Nobody has the right to persecute you for it. So that is why I record everything. That is why wherever I go, whether it's in a shop, whether it's on the bus, whether it's to the cinema, I will be recording everything that involves staff interaction. Because I am not going to be wearing a face nappy, I am not going to be taking a shot of the antidote, and anybody that tries to force me otherwise can swivel, basically. They have... Oh God, what's happening here? Oh, just sign carrying. I actually thought he was being a comedian. Anyway, they don't have any right whatsoever to decide whether or not you can do stuff just because of your medical situation. They cannot do that legally. If they want to say, well, because you haven't been jabbed, you can't come in, that is medical discrimination. As such, we can do whatever we want. Because Boris Johnson and his fucking ilk have done so over this last year. Hanky-panky, going out and getting sloshed, having Christmas parties, laughing at our expense, and yet they want us to lock down. It's ridiculous. Oh, and let me remind you as well, there is that protest that's coming up on the 18th of December, which there is going to be a massive protest in Parliament Square, where they are hoping to get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in there for a peaceful protest. Now, this next point I'm going to make is probably going to draw a lot of heat, and it's probably not going to make me very popular. But this is what I think at the moment. They say they want peaceful protests. They want it to be peaceful because they don't want to give the mainstream media what they want, which is violence. I, however, at this point in time, am secretly hoping it will turn violent. Now, why would I say that? I'm saying it because the government and the media will always try to slander and demerit, I guess would be the most accurate word, the movements, regardless. Yeah, sorry about that. The stairs are a bit of work. Anyway, they are hoping that it will be peaceful. I'm secretly hoping it'll be violent because the media and the government have been doing everything they can, regardless of whether or not it's been wholly peaceful or wholly violent. They have always been out to demerit the cause. They have been going out of their way to give any legitimate protest, any legitimate peaceful movement made by the so-called far right, or just people who are centre of politics, or use or have the one very rare resource nowadays called common sense. They've been doing everything they can to discredit any movement from that side, and they'll do anything they can to do so. Paid agitators. They will lie about the actual figures of how many people have gone to the protests. They will lie about how the police have acted in said protests. More often than not, the police are the ones who attack the innocent British people, unless a paid agitator causes a ruckus first. But they usually get shunted out pretty quickly. Sorry, just putting my computer password in. Anyway, they will go out of their way to legitimately discredit these guys in any which way they can. And they'll use every dirty trick in the book to do so. Anytime there has been a protest from the right wing or the centre, they will kettle and they will attack innocent people. They will pay agitators so that they can make it look like the so-called far right or centre of politics, or those patriots out there, are nothing but a bunch of violent thugs, when it is nothing of the sort, and that behaviour is more akin to the police. Which is why I have grown tired of these peaceful protests over these years. There comes a time and a place where we have to take a step back and take a look at the situation. We have to sit there and say, are these peaceful protests really working? Or are they just a drop in a bucket, as it were? Are we doing the right thing? Or are we wasting our time? That's the way I look at it right now. And after the last 2 years of my political activism, I think we are past the point of pleasantries, but this is just my humble opinion. I don't want violent protests. I don't want a violent revolution. I don't want people getting killed in the streets. Let me be clear on that much. However, there is a point where we have to get serious, and we have to see the problem for what it is. As JFK once said, when you make peaceful resolution impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. And what have we seen over these last few years? The protests with Tommy, the protests against the BBC, the protests against the government, the protests against lockdowns, all happening on a regular basis. And yet, the peaceful protests have seen zero change. This is not one of those, oh, I'm just going to jump on the bandwagon things. No, this is me making a calculated decision based on what I've seen over the last couple of years, and even being at some of these protests myself. I think at this point, we have to say enough is enough. We have to start challenging this government more fervently, with more fervour, with greater fury. Because the way I look at it right now is our government does not give a shit about us. The media does not give a shit about us. Our police do not give a shit about us. And I say, when are you going to make them give a shit? When are you going to actually say, we are downing tools, we are not doing any more work for you, and if this continues, you could be heading for a Tiananmen Square massacre in the United Kingdom. Take a look at what happened in that 1989 massacre, where students had the shit kicked out of them by the Chinese government. I can already see my social credit score going down now. Anyway, take a look at what happened in Tiananmen Square. And then the police started beating them. And then ultimately, the government there decided to use lethal force against the students. Unjustly. Hundreds, if not thousands of people died in that situation because they wanted reform within the government. And a government that unfortunately wasn't prepared to give. If we were to actually get really serious, let me just cancel this scan real quick. God, that thing is a pain in the ass. Anyway, if we were to take a step back at this and look at what our country has become now, I think Xi Jinping. Oh God, 3 million negative credit score for that. Anyway, Xi Jinping would be absolutely proud of Boris Johnson at this point, because what we have got is a United Kingdom of China, where you're not allowed to speak out against the government, you're not allowed to speak out against the shots of the antidote or Poison XIX, you're not allowed to speak about the fake stream media in a negative light, because I'll show you something in the description below as well. Alex Belfield. Ironically, I'd never heard of this guy until somebody commented that I was just basically following what he said, and I wasn't, believe it or not. I had never even heard of the bloke until the guy mentioned it. But this guy actually put out a video, which I will link in the description below, regarding to the BBC hiring two gangsters, two hitmen for £52,000 to torture and murder a man in front of his kids. Let that sink in. Now, if the BBC is willing to do that, it would seem silly to give the government the benefit of the doubt that they are turning this country into a totalitarian state, akin to V for Vendetta, which once again, I highly recommend people watch that film, V for Vendetta. It is a cracking film. I religiously now every single day, whether it's once or twice or many times, I will listen to that media speech that V gives about what our country is in right now. How he turned to our now Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who promised us order and peace, and all he needed from us was our silent, obedient consent. But I really do think I don't want it. Let me be clear, I don't want violence. But I do think that's where we're heading. And I do think that's probably where we're about to head anyway. This government thinks that we're going to conform to their rules. Their plan B. Their plan C. I fucking guarantee you we will not. I sure as hell won't. I'm not going to be wearing a face nappy. I'm not getting a shot of the antidote. I'm not going to be conforming with the shop rules and all that shit. And anybody who tries to challenge me in those places, when I say I'm going to be medically exempt, I will be taken to court. Because it is under the medical discrimination, under the Equality Act 2010. And everyone else can do that as well. And then we can bankrupt our government, and then we'll see how funny they find that. I bet they wouldn't find it funny at all. That is the thing. The only time I have ever worn a face nappy in 2021 is when I went to the job centre a few times and decided to take it off once I was inside, and when I've been in the workplace. That's it. The workplace is the only genuine time I'd probably understand people and myself wearing a face nappy. Other than that, it's straight off the moment I'm out. It is off when I go into the stores. It's off when I go on buses. But I think the British people need to grow a pair of balls and actually grab the establishment by theirs and say, you aren't going to lock us down again, are you? As you put the pressure on them. This government is not going to give in. The government doesn't fear its own people. We need to make it so they do fear us. We need to make it so that they will fear us. Because there are far more of us than there are of them. We could all just drop tools, go home, do nothing. And then the government will be fucked. Because how is a country supposed to run without clockwork to make the machine function? I'd like the government to explain how they'd make their way out of that one. Our government has lied through their teeth. Boris Johnson has lied through his teeth. The media lied through their teeth. The police are two-tier thugs, basically. One rule for them and another rule for us. The government is pushing for vaxxed and unvaxxed, a two-tier class system with these Poison XIX passports. And as much as I'd prefer to go down the peaceful route with the government, I think at this point, the only way things are going to change is with a violent revolution. That is the cold, bitter truth. As I said, I know a lot of people are not going to like that, including my own fans, and I will take whatever heat I get. However, the bottom line is, you cannot change a tyranny. You cannot pay the Dane Geld and then get rid of the Dane, to use a quote from Nigel Farage. Once you've paid the Dane Geld, you cannot get rid of the Dane. We've already paid the Dane Geld, our government. And they will keep pushing and they will stop at nothing until we have nothing left. That's why I feel like what actions need to be taken is this. I don't want it. I've never asked for it. I'd never advocate for violence. I'd never condone violence. But I will completely understand why people would want to go down that route. I've mentioned this many, many times in my videos, and my stance has not changed. But I do think at this point something's got to give. I think either the British people needs to grow a pair of balls and actually be more stern, strict, and serious about this whole protest thing, and actually hold our government and police and the media to account, or we may as well roll over. Because that's basically what's happening right now. They're walking over us like doormats. Mass civil disobedience is basically our last resort before violence. I would prefer the civil disobedience over violence, personally. But as I said, I do think that we are past the point of pleasantries, quite frankly. It hurts for me to say that. Nobody wants to be in the position where they have to say, we have to do this against a tyrannical government. But the bottom line is, our government is not going to change. Something has to give. Actions have to be taken. We can't continue sitting here, twiddling our thumbs, doing nothing. There's also going to be a massive party on the 24th of December outside the Houses and the gates of Parliament. Or is it just in Parliament Square? I can't remember. But there was a Facebook post, I believe, that my anonymous friend pointed me out to, which had already had like 1 million hits or something like that. Loads of people are going down there. We need to show this establishment that they do not control us anymore. They have lost control of us right now. And in the words of Alex Belfield, and I'm probably going to try and do his accent as well, for one particular quote for a video I like, I think you have lost touch with reality and don't understand that when we turn on you, you're fucked. That's basically where we stand right now. The government has lost touch, and Boris Johnson, you need to listen to this. You really have lost touch with reality. You have really lost touch with the British people, and you don't understand quite clearly that the moment the British people turn on you in their hundreds of thousands, you are fucked. You really will have a problem. How are you going to control hundreds of thousands of people protesting or rioting on the streets? It reminds me of that scene in V for Vendetta where that finger man, with everybody getting Guy Fawkes masks and going out and protesting or graffitiing the letter V, that young girl gets shot by one of the finger men, and then all of a sudden riots take place all over London. That is exactly where we're heading right now. It's not going to be long before the police do something stupid. And then the British people really will turn nasty. And then you really will have a problem, Boris Johnson. Because how are you going to control hundreds of thousands of people? And believe it or not, there is a certain thing called the United Kingdom. Not just London. There are whole loads of nations. Nottingham, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Norfolk, Lancaster, Cardiff, Blackburn, Blackpool, whatever you want to call it. There are loads of places in the UK, and they'll all fucking riot. And what will you do to control that? When you lose control of your country, we will be there to hold you to account. So right now, Boris Johnson, you have two choices. You either say, okay, I've messed up. I'm going to get rid of the lockdowns. I'm going to get rid of these draconian processes and rules that we put in place that we don't even adhere to ourselves. Or you continue down this path and lead the United Kingdom into a complete and utter anarchy. Ball's in your court, Boris. My name's Dabima, also known as Abathorex. And I am, as always, very, very bad news for this crooked establishment, the fake news media, our corrupt police, and of course all those sheeple who want to proselytize about wearing the face nappies and getting the jabs. I wonder what's going to happen when you're finally told the truth, sheeple. Will you stay in denial? Or will you accept that your government has been fucking all of us over? I leave it to you. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful evening.